This is NTD Evening News. Live from our NTD Global Headquarters in New York City, here is Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. As we all wait for the Supreme Court's final decision on presidential immunity, the court whittled down its list of cases to decide today by releasing several more decisions. Our legal correspondent Arlene Richards brings us the highlights of 3 of those rulings and the court's recommendations for future proceedings.
The Supreme Court is plodding through the 61 cases it heard this term. First, the court put the Environmental Protection Agency's Good Neighbor Plan on hold. The plan aims to restrict air pollution from power plants and other industrial sources that travel from certain states into others while legal proceedings continue. In a 5-4 decision, the court granted the request from 3 states as well as energy companies and industry groups to pause the rule. Justice Neil Gorsuch, writing the opinion for the court, said that the agency failed to reasonably explain its plan for controlling ozone pollution, and that the states bringing the case are likely to prevail. Justice Amy Coney Barrett, in her dissenting opinion, said the majority's decision is based on an underdeveloped theory. She said the court's ruling will allow several other states to keep polluting their neighbors. The EPA's rule will be on hold until after the D.C. Circuit makes a final determination on the state's complaint and any application to the Supreme Court if necessary. In another decision, the court rejected a major Purdue farmer settlement. The controversial settlement would have sent billions of dollars to treatment programs and victims of the nation's opioid epidemic. But it also would have protected the owners of the company that made its fortune from selling the opioids. In a 5-4 majority decision, Justice Neil Gorsuch wrote that the Sackler family, who owned the company, would get greater relief than they would typically get in a bankruptcy deal. He said the settlement would allow them to avoid claims of wrongful death and fraud while putting very little of their fortune on the table. Fellow conservative Justice Brett Kavanaugh disagreed. In a dissenting opinion, Kavanaugh said the court's decision would have a devastating impact on thousands of victims of the opioid epidemic. Victims who fought for years for this settlement are now deprived, he said. The majority said the settlement effectively seeks to dismiss the claims against the company without the plaintiff's consent. The court sent the matter back to the lower court for further proceedings.
And Arlene, in one more case, the court pushed the Idaho abortion case back to the lower court without making a decision. What can you tell us about the court's ruling?
Well, first, this is the opinion that was inadvertently published yesterday, and it was immediately taken down, but now it's official. So there's a conflict between federal and state law. Now, the state law that bans abortion will not allow a woman to get an abortion unless it's a life risk, a life-saving risk, if it's a life or death situation. But under this federal law, which is called the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, a woman can get an emergency abortion if it's a risk to her health. So what this means is that it's something like if she's going to suffer from infertility if she doesn't get the abortion. So the federal government says that their law preempts the state law. Now, the court is sending this case back down to the lower court to make this decision. But there are several other states that have a similar ban on abortion in their states, and those states are being challenged as well. So this issue is going to come back to the court at some point in time. And Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson made that point in part of her dissenting opinion on this. She said that, we've had this case in front of us. You're dodging the issue. You should have made the decision now, and that it's going to come whether we like it or not. And just on another note, the Supreme Court has a self-imposed deadline of tomorrow, which is Friday, and it's the end of the month for them. But because there are so many cases left, I think there's about 8 more for them to decide. That probably won't happen, or the final decisions won't come until maybe Monday. So we're not sure if the presidential immunity issue will come out tomorrow or maybe next week. We'll have to keep waiting and seeing.
Well, Arlene, thanks for those updates.
All right, thank you.
An update from former President Trump's classified documents case. The judge today rejected Trump's request for a hearing. The defense team wanted to argue that the Justice Department provided false information to obtain a warrant to search Trump's Florida estate 2 years ago. But Judge Eileen Cannon agreed to hold a hearing on a different claim by the Trump team. They argue that prosecutors improperly breached attorney-client privilege. This claim is related to the investigation into Trump's retention of classified documents at Mar-a-Lago after he left the White House in 2021. The order is a mixed result for both sides. It also means further delays in a criminal case that has already seen multiple delays. We're now in the final countdown to the first presidential debate in U.S. history between a sitting president and a former one. New details emerge about what to expect tonight from President Biden and former President Trump. NTD's Iris Tao has the latest from the White House.
President Biden is now landed in Atlanta for the debate tonight after spending the past week poring over policy books and holding mock debate sessions at Camp David. He also made a stop in Atlanta to greet supporters. And Biden's camp says Biden tonight will highlight his achievements and draw clear contrast with his 2024 rival.
I want you to hear Joe's words, but most of all, I want you to listen to his heart.
There'll be millions of Americans watching. He takes that opportunity very seriously, making sure we're giving Americans a little bit of breathing room and not giving tax cuts to billionaires.
Former President Trump, meanwhile, was reportedly doing final brush up with advisors on his flight to Atlanta. He's also been holding policy sessions despite staying mostly active on the campaign trail leading up to the debate. And today, earlier on Truth Social, Trump also previewed some attack lines on Biden's border and energy policies. And now the two campaigns are dropping some last-minute ads both in battleground states and here in Washington, D.C., with Biden's focused on abortion and Trump's focus on the border and the economy. Watch.
They're putting us back decades, if not centuries. Donald Trump did this.
Are you financially better off since he became president?
And as we now inch closer and closer to hearing their actual clashes on the debate stage, let's remember some rules present at tonight's debate. First, when the candidate is not speaking, their mics will be turned off, meaning even if they speak out loud, they would not be able to be heard by the audience in front of the TVs. And also, there's no live audience or reporters allowed inside that debate venue during the debate. And that is sparking some new controversy. The White House Correspondents Association and a group of senior White House reporters and today expressed, quote, deep concerns over the lack of media access, saying at least one reporter should be in there to tell the public about what's going on. For example, when their mics are turned off, what are they saying behind the screen? And also, for example, if any unexpected events happens on that stage, they will be able to capture that. Right now, CNN has not given a final response to change its rules. Meanwhile, third-party candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's not qualified for the CNN debate, says he will do his own real-time broadcast on X, answering the same questions to Biden and Trump. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
Tonight, be sure to join Steve Lance and myself for analysis of the first debate. Watch the first half of The Nation Decides at 8:30 p.m. Eastern and our second half after the debate at 11 p.m. Eastern. That's coming up after this show. Don't miss it. Oklahoma's top education official has asked all public schools in the state to incorporate the Bible into their curricula. The requirement applies to grades 5 through 12. The announcement came today at a state board of education meeting. Superintendent Ryan Walters said the decision is about teaching children about the foundations of Western civilization and the U.S. legal system. Every classroom in Oklahoma must now have a Bible, and teachers have to use it during their instruction. Walters' order will likely be challenged in court by civil liberties groups. Earlier this month, the state Supreme Court blocked an attempt to set up the nation's first publicly funded religious charter school. The superintendent's move comes after Louisiana recently passed a law mandating that all public school classrooms display the 10 Commandments, prompting lawsuits from groups like the ACLU, which argues that the law violates the First Amendment. The pier that the U.S. military built and operates off the coast of Gaza is under the microscope. The Pentagon announcing that its inspector general is investigating the effectiveness of the pier after it faced weather and security challenges. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has more from the State Department.
The Pentagon's investigation into the $230 million floating pier off the coast of Gaza comes amid concerns over its effectiveness in getting humanitarian aid into the region. It's faced several issues since it was built back in May. It had to be re-anchored twice due to heavy seas, and aid distribution has also been paused for weeks due to security concerns. Earlier this week, it was reported that more than 6,000 pallets are on the shore waiting to be distributed. That's because aid workers have been caught in the crossfire of war or because organized groups are stealing their cargo.
That it's becoming a bit more organized and systemic in the sense that gang-like activity is taking place, in the sense that they will stop the vehicle and then forcibly take the commodities from it.
According to the Biden administration, an average of 190 trucks carrying humanitarian supplies have been going into Gaza every single day. This as Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with the UN Senior Humanitarian and Reconstruction Coordinator for Gaza on Thursday.
We continue to face the challenge of aid getting to and into Gaza, but then not being able to be distributed effectively because principally of real security challenges. U.S.
officials have said that the floating pier is a temporary way to get more aid into Gaza, but it does not replace the land crossings. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jack Bradley, NTD News.
People in Bolivia are reacting after an attempted coup by a military commander failed. Bolivia's government announced that a total of 17 people had been arrested for their alleged involvement in the attempted government takeover. Those arrested include the general who led the coup and a former top naval officer. Public support for the president and Bolivia's democracy has poured in from regional leaders and beyond. Supporters of the president rallied in front of his palace and denounced the attempted coup earlier today. The country's armed forces pulled back from the presidential palace in La Paz yesterday evening. Police have since taken control of the square. Speaking to the media before being arrested, the general alleged that the president himself had requested him to stage the coup attempt to push up his popularity. A top Bolivian official denied the claim. A day before the coup, Bolivia's president had stripped the general of his role. During the chaos, President Luis Arce swore in a new military commander. He also called for calm and order to be restored. As the war in Ukraine continues, pressure is now also building up on the other side of Russia. South Korea is sending warnings to Moscow, while North Korea claims it tested a ballistic missile with multiple warheads. NTD's international correspondent Ariane Pasdar has the war update.
The American Director of National Intelligence is reportedly scheduled to meet South Korea's president on Friday. Now, this comes as Russia is strengthening its ties with North Korea, and provocations from North Korea are ramping up. A South Korean newspaper reported that National Intelligence Director Avril Haines is traveling to Seoul. The report cited an unnamed national security official who says the meeting will be unofficial and that there is no plan to make the discussion public. This comes as South Korea's foreign ministry said this on Thursday.
We warn Russia to not make any mistakes that can lead to irreversible consequences between South Korea-Russia relations. We hope that Russia gives up its dependency on North Korea and acts like a permanent member of UN Security Council.
North Korean state media, meanwhile, reports that the country tested a ballistic missile with multiple separate explosives. North Korea claims the test was successful and that one missile can strike different targets. In Europe, leaders of the EU signed a security agreement with Ukraine on Thursday.
Thanks to you and, of course, to all the leaders of the EU for such historic outcome.
The agreement lays out the bloc's commitment to help Ukraine in 9 areas of security and defense. This includes weapon deliveries, military training, defense industry cooperation, and more. Officials are also scheduled to work out a plan to fund Ukraine using profits from frozen Russian assets. Also in Europe, a Russian Navy missile cruiser carried out drills in the Mediterranean Sea on Thursday. The drills focused on repelling sea drone attacks, and it also involved simulated conflict with an enemy vessel and a submarine. This comes as Russia is considering downgrading diplomatic relations with the US and other Western nations. That's over their involvement in the war in Ukraine. No official decision has been made yet. The Kremlin says Russia is still considering different ways to respond to the West. Ariane Pasdar, NTD News.
Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Oregon, California, and New Mexico all battling fires. We have the latest on these blazes, along with a weekend heat update. Here's NTD's David Lamb with the details.
Plumes of smoke filled the sky in Oregon recently. Officials urged evacuations of hundreds of homes in the area, where the 3,600-acre Darlene 3 fire burned in Lapine. The fire commander said there were a lot of unburned fuels.
Today, folks are going in and further securing those areas. There may be additional cleanup and so smoke will be in the area.
The Deschutes County Sheriff's Office says evac alerts were sent to over 1,000 homes and businesses. As of Thursday, Central Oregon Fire Info says the wildfire is 30% contained. U.S. data shows dozens of fires on a federal level as of Thursday. Zooming into fire-prone California, several fires are burning actively, with the Post Fire being the largest at over 15,000 acres in Southern California. Luckily, CAL FIRE says it was approaching 100% containment and passed it on to the U.S. Forest Service. In New Mexico, where the village of Ruidoso evacuated this month due to 2 fast-moving fires, combined, the 25,000-acre fires have 900 personnel working on it. They're nearly 70% contained. It started on June 17th in the southern area of the state. The cause is under investigation. Agencies are warning residents to look out for scams or fraudulent contractors during the recovery phase of a wildfire. With fire season underway, here's our weekend weather update. As forecasted by the National Weather Service, summer heat is still going to be continuing into the weekend. Friday, we see the South, particularly Texas, getting over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Saturday and Sunday, much of the U.S. will be feeling over 80 degrees. And to stay cool, be sure to carry around a hat, stay hydrated, and find shade. David Lamb, NTD News, back to you in the studio.
Top YouTubers are raking in millions upon millions of dollars more every year. The king of them all, Mr. Beast, earned around $82 million last year. But what's it like for less famous YouTubers who don't have 300 million subscribers? We ask them.
YouTuber Mr. Beast made $82 million last year. Comedy duo Rhett and Link, $35 million. Boxer Jake Paul, $34 million. These top YouTubers get millions of views per video and millions of dollars from the ensuing advertising. But for most, the situation is different.
It kind of comes and goes in waves. Sometimes are better than others. It really depends. With what we do in particular, it's so dependent on what's happening in the industry that whenever there's a lull, that hurts us as well.
Andre Seegers is the founder of Game Explain, a channel that makes around 6 figures. Seegers has been running Game Explain for 15 years.
Even then, it was a struggle to build up a audience big enough where it was possible to sustain myself. And that was before, almost everyone had seemingly had a YouTube channel, meaning there's more competition now than ever.
To be successful, Seegers believes you either have to be the best at what you do or find something unique no one else is doing. Others use YouTube to complement existing businesses.
YouTube's one of the credibility pieces as a part of a business. And you can determine to the public, what is your message? What is your voice?
Real estate educator Dutch Mendenhall is not a full-time YouTuber, but he says his channel is important for connecting with customers.
My deep dive customers kind of dive deep into YouTube. It also gives a great ability for you to target customers. Like if you put specific education out there or specific information about your business and people raise their hand and they say, hey, I liked that video.
YouTube is also a way to get clients.
At the time I started YouTube, this was about 7 years ago, I didn't have a lot of subscribers, but I did have a lot of clients from those subscribers.
Marketing expert Julia McCoy's channel also complements her business, AI firm Content at Scale. Her channel has grown along with the popularity of AI.
Today I'm actively building my YouTube channel in AI. It's taking off, getting around 10,000 new subscribers every month. And I'm able to convert those subscribers into podcast listeners and then buyers of our software.
McCoy recommends creating a channel that complements an existing product or service. She says this will give creators clarity on what to talk about and connect them with customers.
The Biden administration's student loan forgiveness efforts continue to face legal hurdles. Young people are now reconsidering the value of going to college. NTD's Andrew Thomas spoke with a political economist to discuss different and perhaps more lucrative opportunities for Gen Z.
You have to go to college to get a good job. Well, that used to be the conventional wisdom anyway. But with more than 40 million Americans and more than $1.6 trillion of debt, a degree might not be so valuable.
What are the benefits of learning a trade or going to trade school instead of going to college?
Well, there's a baseline need for plumbers, electricians, roofers, welders, whatever it might be. People always need those services. Home improvement, patio, bricklaying, patio, cement work, all those kinds of trades, there's always a need for them, and they're not cheap.
Not only are these jobs available, they pay well. For example, an electrician apprentice makes around $40,000 their first year. Experienced electricians can make upwards of $100,000 annually, but some still thumb their nose at the trades.
How have cultural attitudes changed towards trade school and college over the generations?
You know, that's a really good question. And the answer is that they've been looked down upon. And there's been a kind of a view that it's second class. You're a second class citizen if you work with your hands, if you're a tradesperson, right? But that's really not the case.
Political economist James Corey explains how tradespeople can scale their businesses while pursuing other opportunities as well.
In fact, I met a gal who started her own maid business, and now she employs probably 2,000 or 3,000 maids, and she's a multimillionaire, and she's a real estate investor now. She started out being a maid, and then hired other maids, and then became a very successful maid business, and then now she's a real estate investor and still has the maid business.
What advice or what tips do you have for Gen Zers that are considering a profession in the trades?
Have a plan. I'm going to learn this trade in a year. You know, we can move from proficient to expert in 2 years. I'm going to learn the business and how it works, and network. So, meeting other people in the same industry or related industries is a terrific way to build your business, because business is really about people, it's relationships.
Corey adds that going into the trades can be an arduous endeavor, but it beats living with your parents. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Congestion pricing in Manhattan is dead in the water days before it was supposed to go into force. The Metropolitan Transportation Authority voted yesterday to halt the program, set to start on June 30th. The program would have charged a $15 toll for vehicles driving in Manhattan south of 60th Street. It would have been the first congestion pricing program in the U.S. The vote will result in billions in losses for New York's transit plans. Governor Kathy Hochul cited high inflation as one reason for her decision to halt implementation. She also expressed concern that tourists would not visit because of the additional charge. And joining me now to discuss the upcoming debate are Robin Biro, former Obama Regional Campaign Director and Democratic Strategist, and Mike Leon, NTD News contributor and Director of Policy and Strategy at the Free and Equal Elections Foundation. Robin Biro and Mike Leon, thank you both so much for joining us. Robin, I want to start with you. Tonight's presidential debate on CNN comes far earlier in the election cycle than traditionally, as in before the Labor Day weekend. What is at stake in tonight's debate?
Everything is at stake right now. As a Democrat, I'm looking at Joe Biden. He has got to be clear. He's got to be concise. He must deliver from the heart. He's got to speak from the heart tonight. I know that he's been at Camp David rehearsing for longer than most presidents do. And I don't want it to seem like it is rehearsed. I wanted him to speak from the heart and to tell us exactly what Bidenomics means.
And Mike, what do you think? Would you agree with what Robin just said, and what would you add to that?
Yeah, I think Robin's spot on. Not only about President Biden, I think both of them. I think Americans right now are trying to judge, and we're all speaking to this independent base of voters right now, right? The 2% for Jill Stein, Cornel West, RFK, those voters that could potentially siphon away a victory for either of these men. You got to speak to these voters out there about your platform, your policies, how either the former administration helped or hurt you. I don't want to see backtalk from the two of them, sidetracked because of the muting of the microphones. I want to hear policy discussions. I want to hear the actual crisis at the border and what's the solve for it, right? With the system being flooded and it being needed to be revamped. Like, we need to hear solutions from both of these men, because right now, Americans, 62% did not want to see this rematch. So they need to clearly outline vision and strategy for the next 4 years for each of them.
Expanding on that, Robin, polls note that undecided voters are key to this year's election. What do you see this bloc watching for in tonight's debate?
Well, I was actually surprised. I researched this prior to coming on, and right now the closest, most recent poll still shows that in the swing states, there's about 10% of undecided voters. And that is crucial because, look, 7 states in 2020 had less less than 3% margin there. So, a lot is at play right now. They are absolutely looking for policy, just like my peer just said. They're looking for clear, concise policies. They're looking to see who can deliver cogent policies, who can keep up with the pace, and frankly, Americans love a good gotcha moment.
On that note, Mike, what do you think are some key issues you think this bloc is watching for? The economy, immigration, abortion, even foreign policy are some that have come up, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a mixed bag there of all of these things, because if you look at the exit polling from the primaries and caucuses, right, immigration was top of mind. Now, as we've gotten deeper down the trough of the Israel-Gaza war, it's the war. When you talk to younger voters like I have in different focus groups that we've done for the show and that I've been a part of for other programs, it's the war. It's the amount of money that the U.S. is spending. It's what's happening with the Israeli government and what they're committing in Gaza right now. So it depends on who you talk to and what block of voters you talk to, but we're going to over-examine it until November, right? Until we actually see some results. We're going to over-examine the African-American vote, the Latino vote, which I'm a part of, suburban women, young voters. But the key issues are still the same. It's the economic issues. It's the price of consumer goods year over year. It's what is happening at the southern border and what's the solve for that no administration has been able to solve in over 30 plus years. And then it's, about these wars that are happening right now with Russia, Ukraine, and Israel and Gaza, and the money that the U.S. is spending in all of that. I think it's a huge mix, and people clearly want to hear a vision and strategy.
And Robin, a recent poll by NPR, PBS News, and Marist found that Biden has moved up in his standing with independent voters. What do you see the Biden campaign doing right in this regard? And what else does the campaign need to do to ensure that these voters turn out in November?
Thank you. Biden is also doing well with young voters right now, and he's doing better than expected with rural voters and elderly voters. So something's working right. What it is actually is that for once the Democratic Party is getting a clear, concise message. They're working on messaging. We've always been absolutely abysmal with messaging and have allowed Republicans to seize the narrative when it comes to messaging. But he's trying to get out there to talk about the economy. He's talking about record job growth and record low unemployment rates, things like that. But what Americans are desperate to hear from him tonight, make no mistake, are exactly what he plans to do to curb inflation, specifically things like the grocery store. I'm a single dad of 2 young kids. I know very well what I pay for groceries, and we want some answers tonight.
And Mike, on the flip side, the latest Quinnipiac poll has Trump with a slight lead over Biden nationally. That's at 49% compared to Biden's 45%. What does Trump need to do to ensure enough voters turn out for him in November?
Yeah, I think, look, the hardest thing for Donald Trump, anybody that you've ever talked to, anybody in his orbit, is getting him to stay on message and not wandering off of message, right? So that's going to be one of the biggest things to watch tonight, because, look, he's got his legal troubles. He still has other cases pending. We know what happened in New York and the sentencing hearing that's going to happen on July 11th. He needs to talk about, if he's hitting back at President Biden, you got to hit back at the issues that the president can't run from, which is what is happening at the border, the withdrawal in Afghanistan, the wars that are happening. He needs to give a clear solve for how he would do it. Not, this wouldn't have happened under my administration. We don't know that. That's a hypothetical. You need to explain to us what's the solve for getting out. It's similar to the COVID crisis. He didn't handle that from a crisis management perspective properly. And that's what led a lot of independent voters to leave him in 2020, specifically the moderate ones that were in the Republican camp started voting for President Biden because Biden was more clearer on the message and the solve. And that's what Trump needs to do tonight if he truly wants to win this debate.
Robin Byro and Mike Leon, thank you both so much for joining us.
Good to be with you.
Thank you.
From foreign policy to pocketbook issues, what concerns do the American people want to see addressed during the first 2024 presidential debate? NTD's Sam Wong was out on the National Mall to gather insights from voters.
So Trump versus Biden, who would you pick?
Oh, Biden. Oh, Biden, of course.
So I'm picking President Trump.
Donald Trump. The economy was better, a stronger military.
The one who isn't trying to overthrow the Constitution.
Okay. And who are we implying?
I'm implying that the person who thinks they can usurp democracy and completely break precedent.
I just support
whoever the people will elect.
You can't really go both sides because it's a two-party state.
Biden's a little old and Trump's a little Trump.
I want some new candidates and some new ideas in the mix.
I was hoping that RFK would be able to debate.
Any potential expectations on what could happen on the debate stage tonight?
No, sir. Surprise me.
I think they're going to be interrupting each other a lot.
Well, I'm hoping that Joe Biden will talk about the history of what he's done in his 4 years.
Trump's going to have his policies in the 4 years where he was president, and we had the best economy. We had a secure southern border. We had peace around the world. Now you look at it's totally opposite today.
There's still a lot of work to do, especially in the area of student loans and taking care of the problem at the border.
A carbon-free solution to our energy crisis that doesn't get the attention it deserves.
All of the inflation concerns and everyone's pocketbook concerns.
We come from Arkansas and people can't afford groceries.
You know, I got a lot of some grandkids and great-grandkids that are going to be trying to get a job, get their education, and I'd like to see something addressed about that, you know.
On Capitol Hill, lawmakers from both sides of the aisle giving their assessments and setting expectations for tonight's matchup. NTD's Washington correspondent Luis Martinez brings us more.
Lawmakers had set expectations ahead of Thursday's first presidential debate. Republican Congressman Nehls, for example, wore a Trump-inspired necktie and expressed confidence that the former president would come out on top of the matchup.
Trump will thump the chump. They're going to have to give the president something to keep him, keep him eyes open. I want Biden to do just okay, because there are Democrats out there, probably some of them in this chamber that I'm going to walk into in a minute, that do not want him to do well. They want an alternate candidate because the polling shows Trump's going to beat Joe Biden.
While Democratic Congresswoman and squad member Pramila Jayapal accused former President Donald Trump of being authoritarian.
What the president will do is show the clear contrast on how he's protecting freedoms. Trump is trying to take away freedoms. Biden is for protecting our democracy and making sure that people's votes count in elections. Trump is for being a dictator on day one.
Some Republican lawmakers also suggested the possibility that the presidential candidates might not be the same come November.
My theory on debates are you bring your side, I bring my side, and we both leave thinking we won.
So you don't think it's going to necessarily move the needle when it comes to voting?
No, I think what it could do, though, if the president has a complete meltdown, President Biden, which he's very capable of doing, I believe the Democrats will start looking at the governor of California as their nominee.
Republicans and Democrats did agree that Thursday's debate is an opportunity for both parties to showcase the stark contrast in the offers of both presidential candidates.
But all of that is a distraction from the fact that you've got one guy who is a career public servant, Joe Biden, who has devoted himself to the public good and talks about issues and talks about policy, and another guy who continues to be utterly frivolous and wants to engage in ad hominem attacks and character assassination.
California Governor Gavin Newsom confirmed that he will be in Atlanta to support President Joe Biden, while 6 Republican lawmakers will be in Atlanta also to support former President Donald Trump, among them Vice Presidential hopeful Byron Donalds, J.D. Vance, and Marco Rubio. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, let's start in the NBA, where the second round began this afternoon. What's been the biggest storyline today?
You know, LeBron James, actually, because his son was eligible for the draft. He did not get selected in the first round yesterday. In any case, LeBron's own Lakers drafted him today, number 55 overall. Now, Bronny was quite a wild card heading into this event. Part of that is because LeBron James has long stated his desire to play with his sons in the NBA, and LeBron can opt out of his contract at any time. So it was speculated if you drafted him, will LeBron come there? Well, we might never find out. I'm thinking LeBron is going to stay now. But meanwhile, Bronny's stock, too, has kind of gone up and down. You know, a year ago, he was a high school All-American as a senior. And then last summer, unfortunately, he suffered a cardiac arrest that delayed his season at USC. He really never got going. This, though, where the Lakers took him number 55 today, this is kind of where everybody thought he would go. And now father and son are on the same team.
Now, shifting gears to soccer, the U.S. is playing Panama as we speak in their second match of the Copa America. What are the expectations for the Americans here?
I mean, for this game, for sure, it's to win. I mean, right now, though, the score is tied 1-1, and that's in the first half, so it's early. But Panama is one of the lowest-ranked teams in this event, along with Bolivia, who the U.S. already beat on Sunday. Should they win, this should guarantee them a trip to the next stage, the knockout round. They still have to play Uruguay, though, but even if they lose there, I think they'll make it. Now, one subject related to this is, despite the Copa America event and the Euro event going on right now, Major League Soccer has still continued their season uninterrupted, though some teams are playing with incomplete rosters right now, making for an unusual arrangement, including the league's most famous player right now, who is Lionel Messi. He's, of course, playing for Argentina right now. This has drawn plenty of criticism kind of from around the league. I think it'll be interesting if the league eventually reverses their position and shuts down, like most of the rest of the leagues, especially in Europe, are doing for the Euro 2024, for the Copa America, and for the Olympics this summer. We'll have to see the next time this happens, though, if they follow suit.
Well, Dave, as always, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, Tiff.
Independence Day is quickly approaching, and Americans are gearing up for fireworks. NTD's Andrew Thomas speaks with an industry expert to discuss how to have fun without getting hurt.
Fireworks have a strong connection to Independence Day in the United States. A.J. Burns is a pyrotechnics expert and area sales manager at Great Grizzly Fireworks in Muncie, Indiana. He explains how people enjoyed fireworks long before the 4th of July, 1776.
Fireworks were brought over here, and actually back in 1608 in Jamestown, Virginia was the first time that any of the colonists had used fireworks to celebrate the 4th of July, and it just became a time-honored tradition after that. Obviously, fireworks originated in China, made their way over into Europe, and eventually over to the United States.
So what are illegal fireworks, and is it a significant issue in the U.S.?
Obviously, things like the M80s, the cherry bombs are being bootlegged everywhere in the country. Some guy selling them out of the back of his truck or trunk, and, hey, everybody, check out what I got. Those things can lead to big problems, big injuries and loss of limb type stuff, loss of life even.
Even though these pyrotechnics are contraband, they still make it to the black market.
Basically imported illegally, misclassified documents, things like that, coming in through the same channels that all the legal fireworks are coming in. And there's such a volume of it, fireworks usage is higher, or the highest as it's ever been.
Burns also notes that while fireworks have proliferated, injuries are the lowest they've ever been. But accidents can still hurt the industry's image.
The fireworks industry as a whole does what we can to try to prevent that, stop that, because something happens that's bad, that's negative, and it makes it directly to the media. But at the same time, there's tens of thousands of mom and pop shops across the country that never have issues every year.
What steps should people take to enjoy fireworks safely this 4th of July?
Number one, buying illegal fireworks, you never know what you're going to get. They're not tested properly, so buying from a legal licensed store in your state, adhering to the local laws. Not all aerial fireworks are legal in every state. Most of them they are, but not everywhere. Making sure that your audience is at a safe distance.
Fireworks can be a ton of fun, but they're still explosives. Burns says users need to be mindful of nearby neighbors, bystanders, cars, and houses. Spent sparklers can also stay hot and can cause third-degree burns if stepped on, so it's important to pick them up after they burn out. Learn more about fireworks history, science, and safety at celebratesafely.org. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
A determined 12-year-old set out to build a lawn mowing business from scratch, and his persistence is paying off. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more.
At 12, Chase Gallagher was doing chores for pocket money, but wanted more. Too young for official work, he decided to mow lawns, learning to make flyers on YouTube, and landing his first job for $35.
I've always been a hustler, always wanting more, and I just kept going. Next year, when I was 13, my brother was older, and he finally got his license, and my parents bought him a little Ford Escape, so I paid to put a hitch on the back of his SUV. I had a mower already, my dad's mower, and I was like, I want to take this to the next level, and we have 4 big developments around me.
Mom helped out, staying late at work to print out thousands of flyers.
And then that winter, I passed out over 5,000 flyers to the surrounding neighborhoods. And that's when we went to 13, 14 weekly lawn mowing clients. I traded the old mower in. I bought a little zero turn. And that's when the business really started taking off when I was 13.
His business became his passion. Soon he was clearing $20,000 a year. His mom let him do high school online, and he was free to do work and do estimates anytime he wanted. It took him courage at 17 to finally stand up and say he wasn't going to college. His mom wasn't thrilled because she put in a lot of work helping him get into Penn State. But Gallagher was firm in his decision.
I remember like my vision back then was to have like branches in Italy, Canada, Mexico, like all sorts of, you know what I mean? So I don't even know where it came from, but I just had goals, and so I just worked towards them.
At 18, realizing the potential of project-based landscaping, he sold his lawnmowers, rebranded to CMG Landscaping, and shifted his business model. Today, he owns several properties, employs 9 workers, and his company made over $1 million in revenue last year, placing him among the top 1% of income earners at 23 years old.
The past 2 years, I've been investing in real estate. So I bought a 32-acre plot of land, and that's where I store a lot of my equipment. I have other tenants on there. So a lot of times what I'll do is position my team in our slow months to work on my real estate portfolio. I'll flip a house or 2 over winter, keep them as rental properties. So that's kind of like a side business.
Gallagher also runs CMG University, a coaching program helping lawn care operators transition into landscaping companies. He shares some wisdom for aspiring entrepreneurs.
Learn a skill, whatever. If you're a plumber, HVAC, landscaper, whatever you are, be the best person at that service. And focus, this might be too high level, but focus on client experience. That means answering emails fast, calling people back, giving direct responses, all these things. It's like, be the best plumber you can be to start, charge a premium because you are the best, and then as you build a team, focus on client experience.
Beyond business, Gallagher is passionate about finding a cure for C3G, a rare kidney disease he was diagnosed with in 2nd grade. After undergoing a kidney transplant at 20, he now raises awareness for the serious illness. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And that's all for today's news. For round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.